John McMullen, Jody McDonald, your Birds 365 Mac and Mac guys. Scotty Grayson going to join us in just 1 second. But quick response to our stream here. Guys, again, crushing me for my hypothetical points of view. You know who else does hypothetical? The Philadelphia Eagles. In preseason, John told us it was for matchup purposes. That's why they did it. When they decided to move James Bradbury in and get him some experience in the slot, I think part of it was, hypothetically speaking, what happens if Avonte Maddox gets hurt? Oh, guess what? Avonte Maddox got hurt. Avonte Maddox is done for the season. So it's a good thing that they thought hypothetically to get Bradbury up to speed in the slot, just in case. So just for those of you who hate that fact when I go hypothetical, others do it too. The Philadelphia Eagles did it and got to benefit from it. All right, Scott Grayson, I'm sorry. I had to get that off my chest. You looking good, brother? How you been?
Oh, a little tired after last night, but who's not, right?
Yeah. How about that?
Come on, they got it over in 2.5 hours. What happened to 4 hours of punit? What? 4 hours of pain, 4 hours of death. What was the quote from last year?
Yeah, it's like 4 hours of pain, something like that.
4 hours, yeah. 4 hours of pain.
2.5 hours. They got it over and done with last night.
Yeah, I was a little surprised when I left the ballpark last night at what time, but I was like, oh, I mean, I thought it'd be like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. It was not
old school, like I said. You know, those Yankees Red Sox games from 1999 are still going on.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, baseball's changed in that way, and that's a positive, by the way. Those games were torture to get to the you know, especially when you start at 8 o'clock, Scott, which is another thing. But 7 o'clock starts, I advocate as well.
Yeah, I'm all for that. The 6:40 during the season is
6:40.
Yeah. Get out.
That's not going to happen either. So just like Eagles playing at 1 o'clock, we got one of those. We're not getting many of those. It'll be 1 o'clock out in the West Coast though with the Los Angeles Rams. A little bit better than I think people expected, Scott. Aaron Donald obviously is first and foremost on everybody's mind, and it doesn't come at the best time for the Eagles because they lose Cam Jurgens for at least a little bit. Sue Opeta, how concerned? What's your concern level that the Eagles can hold up against one of the greatest defensive players of all time? And by the way, that's not hyperbole.
No, I mean, obviously he is every bit the legend that is growing about him for sure. And he is where I would start my game plan on offense in terms of saying, okay, we got to make sure he doesn't blow up everything we're trying to do. Right. So, right. You're right about Cam Jurgens. You're missing him. So how do you cover up for that? I mean, that's going to be a lot of what Kelsey's going to have to decide at the line of scrimmage, how they're going to try to block him wherever he's lined up and what the plan is of attack there. So, I think you're going to have to give help. You're going to have to be ready to chip at that guy. I also want to see some designed rollouts. I think the best way to mitigate some of that is to get out and just design rollout to get away from where the pressure is going to come. So I want to see if they'll get Jalen to be a little bit more mobile out of the pocket in that way on a designed play with his reads downfield from there. I think you have to definitely – sorry about that.
You got to find Nick Sirianni's going to pop in.
I know, right?
Yeah.
You got to. I think you definitely have to mitigate whatever he can bring, but you're going to have to do that with running backs. You're going to have to do that with bringing an extra lineman over to help chip. You're going to have to whatever you can to make sure you can get the ball downfield. But frankly, I also want to see the running game as a great way to try to take away some of what a pass rush gives you. So just stay away from Donald, because if you do that, I think you're going to have an opportunity for success.
All right. Will Nicholas Morrow have more sacks than the entire rest of the team combined this week, the same way he did last week?
Why was he getting those sacks, right? It's because the defensive line is doing their job. And frankly, like to Sean Desai's credit, he did bring in a couple of blitzes along the way, which allowed Morrow to get home. And you see Hassan Reddick got home, which was great to see too. I think he's going to start building some momentum. But Nicholas Morrow, I mean, you got to love what the guy brings. He doesn't, they always say, right, John, you've heard this too, if you think out there, you're going to be too slow. And what you see Morrow doing right now is just reacting. Reed Blankenship's doing a lot of that too. They trust their gut. They react. They don't stop and think about what they might be seeing in front of them. And I think Morrow's doing a much better job of that. And so I'm excited by what he's bringing them at that position. And I think that's going to be one of the keys this week as well is bringing those blitzes at the right time. Because look, what is Matt Stafford? Matt Stafford is not the most mobile quarterback, and he's also a little banged up right now. So to me, the game plan has to be to get in there as best you can and make that guy have to move on that bum foot and really try to throw off of it as well. Don't let him have time to find his receivers downfield, who may include Cooper Kupp this week. So, but Nicholas Morrow has been, I think, a great find, and I think the key is going to be to find ways to bring him at the right time on those blitzes with that pass rush coming in all different ways from the front four.
I'm going to disagree a little bit, Scott, from this perspective, and I want to give Sean Desai some credit here because I gave Brian Johnson credit for this. I think he's done a good job game planning for specific opponents. So, against Washington, very young quarterback, very inexperienced quarterback, they blitz more than I have all year. I think that makes sense. This week, it's Matthew Stafford. He's seen everything. And you mentioned the receivers, and Jody has been talking up Puka Nacua, and rightfully so. He's been tremendous as a rookie. If Cooper Kupp comes back, that's one of the best receivers in all of football. And you have the 27th ranked pass defense. You really want Matthew Stafford getting one-on-one shots with those guys against the Eagles secondary right now?
No, I don't. But I will say I think the Patriots kind of put out there a little bit of the blueprint that the Commanders tried to follow last week, which was get the ball out of your hand in 2.5 seconds or less, and it doesn't matter what the Eagles do. And Matthew Stafford, you're right, with his veteran capability, he will be able to do that. I think that's going to become more of a common thread against this team, is these quarterbacks are going to look to get rid of the ball quickly. Well, I think you got to try to make sure you can get them. To me, and I hear what you're saying. I think you're right about the veteran prowess of a Matthew Stafford. But with Puka and with Cooper Kupp out there, it was interesting talking to Slay yesterday. He pointed out, because of his history with Matthew Stafford, and he kind of hinted at something. He was like, if Staff's throwing you the ball, he likes you. Well, I mean, if he's not throwing the ball, no matter how good you are, he doesn't like you. And he's pointed out that he must really like Puka and what he's doing out there for the amount of times he's feeding him the ball. I think it's by necessity without Cooper Kupp there as well. But that being said, getting back to your point, I just want to make Matthew Stafford have to move right now at less than 100%. And if that means I've got to bring a guy up the middle to get him to move, then and not be able to get rid of that ball in 2 to 2.5 seconds because he doesn't have time yet to see his receivers break open. Or I'm not saying blitz as much as last week, but I still want to see that be a part of the game plan, because I really don't want Matthew Stafford sitting in the pocket and being able to pick it apart.
And by the way, Matthew likes Slay very much, so maybe he throws it to Slay.
That's what Slay was asked about that, and he said, "Yeah." He's like, "If he throws me one, I'm going to take it, but I don't expect him to give me a chance." Is more or less what he said.
By the way, that's only Slay's second best quote of the week. Did you see what Slay said about AJ Brown getting a random drug test?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I did. Yeah. No, I did not. But I did notice that in his locker after the game on Sunday.
Yeah.
AJ Brown, for anybody in the stream hasn't heard this yet either. AJ Brown got a random drug test. That's why they call it random. You don't know when it's going to come. It's kind of at the discretion of the NFL, and it pops up, and you got to take the test, and you better go ahead and pass. So when asked about it, because AJ had to do it this past weekend after the game, and could it have something to do with the fact that he made 9 catches for 175 yards and 2 touchdowns? Well, those up on the grassy knoll, of course, are going to go with, that's why they tested him. Slay fed into it. His quote was, "You put up drug test numbers, you get drug tested."
Yeah.
How great is that? That's just a phenomenal quote.
I love Slay. Slay's so much fun to talk to.
Yeah, he is. Tremendous teammate as well. I've said, bro, I don't think people realize, because sometimes I've said it on the show a lot, Scott. Sometimes Slay comes across as goopy and not serious, and he obviously tries to lighten up the mood for everybody, but He's a great teammate, man.
Well, you're right.
He rides and dies with his guys. And that even guys like Matthew Stafford, who he's been talking about, he's one of the guys and Jody could tell you, I've been a big Matthew Stafford fan for years. He was great in Detroit. People didn't realize it because the Lions were a disaster for most of his time there. Slay was one of the guys who talked, this guy's freaking good, man. He really, really sticks by his teammates. It's impressive. I will say that.
You got a sense of that even with the back and forth he had with Jake Elliott after the game in the locker room about second best athlete on the team.
Yeah. Everybody's second best.
Right back to him. He's like, I'm maybe second best, but I'm not number two.
Yeah.
So you're right. And that just went to show, because sometimes those kickers, and they're placed in their own little box and they're left, alone. But it's Slay. You got that sense genuinely that's not the way Slay feels about him or anybody else in that locker room.
All right, I already got everybody annoyed at me today because of my hypothetical, so I might as well annoy Scott Grayson too. Quiz for you, Mr. Grayson. There are 4 players in the National Football League so far this year that have scored at least 6 touchdowns. Can you name any of the 4?
At least 6 touchdowns. Well, you teased with hypotheticals.
Be thinking Miami 70 points.
Yeah. Tyreek Hill?
No.
Mostert.
Mostert is 1. He's got 7.
Former Eagle, by the way.
Stay with running backs in Miami.
Kevin Atkins? What's the young
Devon?
kid?
I was told it was A-Chain, and then somebody said afterwards it's A-Chin or A-Chin, not A-Chain. He corrected everybody's pronunciation of it. The other one is Christian McCaffrey, who might be the best player in the National Football League. And one more is Kyren Williams, who's the running back for the Rams. He is one of only 4 guys in the NFL who has 6 touchdowns. Are we underselling the fact that the Rams might be able to have a balanced offense this week against the Eagles?
Well, it's a good question because the Commanders were able to do a better job on the ground than anybody else had against the Eagles in previous weeks. But the run game, the run defense is not something I'm really too worried about with this defensive line, with Jordan Davis the way he's playing, Jalen Carter the way he's playing, Fletcher Cox. I know he's on the injury report this week, and we'll see what happens with him. But he seems to have been having a resurgence. Then you talk about like Nicholas Morrow. If he's not blitzing, he's in there to come in as a linebacker. I'm not really worried about the run defense here. I'm more worried about Stafford and company outside than I would be about Kyren Williams. Now, I bet teams before them thought that way that played the Rams, and that's why he's had the success he's had. And that's certainly something you want to keep an eye on. But I trust this Eagles run defense. I really feel like that's where they really need to I think that's where they build their success from. If you can take one part of the game away like they did in the first 3 games, it makes it harder to do the other part. And I'd like to think they're going to be able to establish that run defense and make the Rams beat them through the air.
Now, shame on me because we're about 98 minutes into the show and I haven't brought up Fletcher Cox yet. So he had an epidural this week to deal with some back issues. May not play this week. We'll see how things progress. If he does miss any time, it's only supposed to be a game, but Fletcher's played pretty well this season for people who haven't noticed.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, Marlon Tuipulotu shows up on the injury report with a triceps. And we talked about the Eagles' depth inside. They still have Jalen Carter. They still have Milton Williams. They still have Jordan Davis. They're better equipped than anybody else to handle losing some people. Even Contavious Street. We might see more Contavious. We might finally get to see more Ojomo. They have so many defensive tackles. You can keep going and going and going and going. But running game, no Fletcher Cox. no Marlon Tuipulotu. Does that make you a little bit more wary that 63 yards a game turns into whatever they gave up against Washington, about 100, could continue going into a negative direction?
It's something you don't want to overlook, which is why I mentioned Fletcher on the injury report, John, because he has been having a better year. And I think a lot of that has to do because of the young guys who are demanding more attention. For years, we were talking about Fletcher Cox getting double, triple teamed, right?
Yeah.
And now I think the other guys are getting the attention to where Fletch is a little more able to move and be a part of it. That's why I think he's having a great year. I think he's, getting all the success he deserves. Will they miss him? Sure. But to me, the problems against the Commanders and why that defense was on the field longer than it should have been because it couldn't get off the field. The third down conversions were a problem. The 2-for-2 on fourth down were a problem. The penalties called were admittedly by several players after the game ticky-tack, allowed drives to continue. Commanders got 5 first downs by penalty. Those are ingredients for allowing a team to stay on the field and wear you down. The Eagles this week, with the potential of not having some of those guys in the middle, I mean, the recipe for success is do what you do and then get off the field. Don't let drives linger. Don't, allow yourself to get worn down and get tired. And frankly, I think the offense as well needs to do some more time of possession control, allow your defense to get rest and be able to stop that run up the middle with those guys that may not be there. You're going to lean on the other guys a little more, right? So is it a point of concern? It's something you want to watch for. Certainly something to watch for with the inactives on Sunday, an hour and a half before when that comes out. But you're right. They do have depth there. They do have these guys who are chomping at the bit to get their turn. And frankly, you mentioned Milton Williams. I like watching him play. I think he's definitely, one of those guys that's kind of rising up a little bit and having some success. So I think there's opportunities for those other guys to step in and show why they were kept here and the key pieces in depth that they need to be. Again, I'm not as worried about the run defense this week. I seem to be more concerned about slowing down Stafford and company in the air.
No, I think that's fair, by the way.
I want to ask you about the Rams running game. We did. I want to ask you about the Eagles running game in this way. And we touched on it earlier in the show. Jalen Hurts was asked, has his mindset changed about him running the football? And his answer was one word, nope. When asked about it, both the offensive coordinator and the head coach have said, oh, yeah, we've talked to Jalen about being more smart and more protective and to go down when necessary and to slide. So we're getting a little conflict of answers here. Jalen says nothing changed. The coaches admit, oh, yeah, we asked them to change. We can see with our own eyes through 4 games and just by crunching the number, even if you didn't watch the game and you just looked at the box score, you go, oh, he's not running as much as you used to. If you watch the game, you've seen the slides, you've seen the give-ups. I'm not saying it's wrong. It might very well be right, but why the disillusionment between what they're saying? Does it matter at all? Is this something, and I said this earlier too, Nick Sirianni, when asked when Hurts signed the contract, oh, he's going to run less? Why would I take away his superpower? Well, you're taking away his superpower. Hey, come on, Nick, you've admitted to it. Why the disconnect with Jalen Hurts and his running game?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with I'll trust my eyes more than I will anything that any of them say. And my eyes tell me, Jody, like yours, he's going down easier. He's not taking on contact. You know what, though? I respect that. There's enough weapons on this offense. They shouldn't need him to have to do that. Now, is there a play in the game? Is there a key conversion that could come up where he's just got to maybe go try to get that and take some contact to get that first down? Yeah, and those are the spots where I want to see that, as you pointed out, superpower emerge. I get, if I were a Bills fan, I would be absolutely floored at how much Josh Allen looks to take on those hits, and it's unnecessary for a regular season game at times. Again, there are moments in a game where you may need to call on that, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. That's being a competitor, being a gamer. But, yeah, you sign that contract. We see what Jalen Hurts' value is to this team. I don't think it's wrong for him to go down and avoid that contact. In fact, I like it. Run out of bounds. 2, 3, 4 yards short of the marker. Unless it's a key third down, they need to get that on. That's where I need to see Jalen put that in. It's not as effective as it was last year. His threat of running the ball, I think teams have picked up on, is not what it was last year because he's choosing not to, and the Eagles have chosen to make that a point of emphasis. We're in week 4, week 5 now. As you get later in the year and, then maybe you start to do it in playoffs for sure. I would expect to see that become, but I also feel like teams are defending it better. I feel like there are linebackers that are reading it better. And I feel like they've got spies more often than not that are staying right with him and not biting on the RPOs. Their assignment is to stay with Jalen and they aren't moving. So I think that's also a contributing factor. But I just want to see Jalen when it needs to. That's when you do it. But man, I've seen Josh Allen so many times take those hits. I don't want to feel like that watching Jalen Hurts in the early in the second quarter on a drive take a hit where you go, oh, is he getting up from that? I don't think anybody here needs that, and I don't think the Eagles need to put him in that position. They have enough around him that they shouldn't need to worry about that.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. Last season, people came in to the year saying Jalen Hurts has got to beat us. Let him beat us. This year, it's the exact opposite. We can't let Jalen Hurts beat us. And I think that's the difference. I really do. You mentioned all the spies. Everybody's playing zone coverage. All eyes are on the quarterback. So the minute he moves, you got that spy, bang, he's right there. As the Eagles deal with it better, maybe that changes as the season goes on. But I think it's that simple. People are saying, all right, somebody else has got to beat us. And that's the beauty of this offense. They haven't even gotten to Dallas Goedert, Scott.
Right. And I was talking to Dallas yesterday and just kind of asking you, does this offense have an identity yet? It's still a work in progress? And he said it's a work in progress. And I think that's true. And he hasn't been featured yet, right? And I think, frankly, we're starting to see what this offense will be. It's that Dallas gets 4 to 5 receptions a game. That's probably what it's going to be, unless somebody finds a way to shut down both Devontae Smith and, A.J. Brown. But they have the ability to be – I think that's what they do. I think early in games, they just sit back and say, how are you trying to beat us? And then we'll alter around that, which is why the running game suddenly, took off because teams were trying to shut down the receivers outside. And that goes back to it. You don't need Jalen Hurts to run the ball when you've got DeAndre Swift. And even I think Kenny Gainwell's coming along. I think he's going to improve even more because of what he sees Swift doing. I mean, the running style of DeAndre Swift is impressive. He's patient, he gets in the hole, and the vision in the hole is what really gets me because he can cut one way or the other and see where that's going to be. I think if Kenny could even pick up some of that, it's going to make him even better. But yeah, the Dallas Goedert game's going to come. He's going to have his 7, 8, 9 catch game. It's coming because as teams continue as A.J. Brown goes off, you just know they're going to have to start paying more attention or doing things to allow him not to be the guy that goes off. And it just opens up. I think that's what the identity of this offense has to be, is a roll with the punches offense. Whatever you throw at us, we can adjust and beat you in another way. They have what they need, and they just need to use it.
Last one for me, Scott, and I started this on Monday. Knew we were going to be breaking down certain aspects of the Eagles where they haven't yet achieved the standard they're looking for. But as Jalen likes to say, keep the main thing, comma, but they're 4-0. This upcoming week, is it going to be the same thing here on Birds 365, comma, but they're 5-0? Are they going out to LA and getting win number 5?
Yeah. I do feel like it's going to be one of those gut-wrenching kind of games. I think I saw they were a 5-point favorite. I don't know if they still are. I feel like I would take the Rams +5. I think this is going to be a close game. I just feel like Aaron Donald, Matthew Stafford, the return of Cooper Kupp. You got to imagine what that's going to do to that locker room if he does come back, to know he's out on that field. I just feel like this is going to be a bit of a grind. We talked about Fletcher Cox maybe not being in there as well. You're still going to have to. I don't know that you're going to have Roby ready to go here this weekend, so you're probably going to have Bradbury in the slot more again. To me, it just feels like they're going to have to grind it out. But that being said, because this team has won in so many different ways, because they've overcome adversity and still, as you pointed out, been 4-0 without playing their best football or anything really even close to it. Yeah, I kind of feel like they do come out of here 5-0. But I feel like you're going to leave going like you did last week. A little bit of an exhale.
Now, bigger prediction, and it's at S Grayson Fox 29. Make sure you follow Scott there. Does a tremendous job with our buddy Breland Moore and everybody else at Fox 29. There's about 70,000, I think, for football in SoFi Stadium. How many of those 70,000 are going to be wearing green?
That's a great point. Boy, I'd love to go half, but I don't know it'll be quite that high. I think they're trying to get those.
It's going to be higher.
It's a popular road trip, as you brought up, John. Everybody loves to go to LA, and there's a lot of fans out on the West Coast. Some of my friends that I've kept in touch with,
they're willing to give up their tickets. The Rams fans.
They are. You're right. That's a great question. It's going to be interesting to watch what the sound will be.
But wait, John, they're 2-2. They're actually the Rams. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But that'll be fun to watch. Those trips when you get you get your first sense when you get to the airport, to get your flight, and you see how many fans are on that plane.
Yeah, how many go Birds? How many people recognize me? I got the hat. I'm not Scott Grayson, but I got the hat.
I gotta believe you try to fly incognito, John.
I do.
Tuck that hat down and
yeah.
He tries to hide it. It doesn't work. All right, Scotty G, thank you very much for coming on. We'll get you back in a couple of weeks. Appreciate it, big guy.
All right, always a pleasure, guys.
Thanks, bud.
Scott Grayson here with us on Birds 365 on almost every single site. Eagles 4.5-point favorite. Not quite the 5 that Scott said, 4.5. But that's on the road, flying cross country. It tells you a little something. Vegas is giving the Eagles their props. Not every sports website in the world with their power rankings is giving the Eagles their props.
And I'm so 70. I'm saying more than 30.
You're saying over 50%.
Over 50%. Over 50%.
The beauty of that is afterwards you can say whatever you want. Oh, I could tell it was.
Yeah, no, well, that's true.
Unless nobody's there or it's 85%.
Now,
anything in the middle, you can say it was 51%. It was 49%. You can make the argument either way.
There's a lot of, Pittsburgh, I remember, went there and took over. San Francisco, it's much easier, but they completely take over. Everybody takes over that stadium. So Eagles fans take over stadiums, that other people don't. I can't imagine they're not going to take over that stadium.
And you're there for road games much more often than I am, but I've been to some where I tried to get a gauge just looking at the house, and I thought it was about 25 to maybe 1/3 Eagles fans. Then the game starts. Then you judge volume, and it's still louder. The Eagle fans are louder than the home, even though they only got 1/3 of the crowd. Not only do they
here's my prediction. The Rams got to go to silent count at some point.
Ooh, that tells you something. In your house, you got to go to silent count. Yeah, the other team's fans have pretty much taken over your building. All right, he's McMullen. I'm McDonald. Come back, put a bow on the show here on Birds 365.